apologize to the memory of Charlie Hawk's fudge. I tried 4 times to make that recipe of Charlie Hawk's fudge. Every time it was a flop. So after a half a gallon of cream, 12 cups of sugar, a can of cocoa, you know, what you got out there is probably not the real deal. But the ingredients that's in that recipe is what's in that fudge, and I don't know what the Hawks family did to make it work, but I couldn't make it work.
I'm Miss Connors and I can't make it either.
Oh, that's so much better. Yeah, it makes me feel better. I would appreciate it if you'd silence your cell phones. Our program is going to be a long program today, and if you have to leave, because it's going to go over an hour, I'm sure, you go ahead and just get up and go. We understand that completely, but we want everybody to be able to share what they want to share and ask the questions that they want to ask. So, to get started, this started out with a phone call to Karen Speed, and she teamed up with Richard Moeller, and they have put this together on a fabulous level. So I'm going to turn it over to Karen and Richard, and they'll go ahead with the program. Karen.
Well, thank you, Bonnie, and thank you, Richard, for organizing this. And I really want to thank Richard. He keeps me excited because he did a wonderful job of the slide presentation and the research that he did put together, and we had great conversations about the sale barn and the function of it. I'd like to thank Laurel Schultes also for the pictures and the articles that you're going to see in the slideshow, and she did a fantastic book over there that's over there, and Richard looked at every page, read everything, did quite a job. And Brad, he drew the scale of the sale barn, and that came about because Richard didn't quite get how this all worked for the sale barn, so thank you, Brad, for doing that. And a huge, huge thank you to the people that are going to make this and help me out as the panel, and they're going to introduce themselves here just in a little bit. I just want to tell you that I started working as a freshman in high school at the Ranch House Cafe. That was in 1964, so you can figure out I'm old anyway. And the Meade School District would release you on Wednesday to work. And there was a lot of employees that worked in the yard back and at the sale barn on Wednesdays, and also when they had more sales. I worked there until I went to college in '69, and then Juanita Roth asked, and Paul, my husband, was the night man, and he worked at all aspects of it, but she asked us if we wanted to clean the pavilion and the ring, and at that time she said, I'll give you $90. Well, $90 in that 1970 was a lot of money, you know. So we did that once a week after the sales, and then I went into the office. They had a hostess, it was called, and instead Juanita and Jim, you know, decided that you needed to go get the buyers and get in the consigners or whoever and tell them about a phone call, because that would interrupt the auction sale if you went over the intercom. So she had a position there where you went and told the buyers they had a phone call. And after that, I moved into the office, and I wrote consigners checks until 1993, and I worked there at Sturgis Livestock County with the Ranch House Cafe for 36 years. I really enjoyed Sturgis Livestock, and boy, as I got older, you listen to the ranchers that came in, and they were all full of wisdom, and if you just would listen to them, they pretty much true what was going to happen and what was the future look like. Paul, my husband, he worked all aspects of the sale barn, and he ended the auctioneering ending as an auctioneer for 25 years, and he worked at the sale barn for 40 years. He was very passionate about SLE, and he'd love to be here to tell his story, which he'd do a lot better than I would. But I'd like to, in the crowd, I would like to recognize Mary Madden, who is Jim Madden's daughter. Could you stand up, please? Thank you, Mary. I'd also like to recognize Holly and Lyle Krauser, who is Dale Maddox's daughter and son-in-law. And Sue Hawks, she is Charlie Hawks's daughter, who was an auctioneer for many years at Sturgis Livestock. And is there anyone else here that is affiliated? Oh, I know Harvey I just learned this. Harvey Fitzgerald, would you stand up? He's an uncle to Billy Demerly, who worked there for many years. And
I'm Nancy Davis. My dad, Ivan Davis,
Ivan.
worked there about 40 years.
yeah, and then Nancy
And
Davis.
3 sisters.
And 3 sisters, yeah, okay. So with that, I'm going to give the mic over to the panel, and I'm going to have them introduce themselves and tell them about themselves.
I'll go last.
Please stand up, okay?
I am standing up. I've got that before. I started working at Sturgis Livestock in 1960 for Jim Roth. Wonderful family. Juanita was the wonderful lady there. I'll tell you what, they treated me so well. I was working in Rapid at the sale barn there. Came up here, worked there till I guess it was about 1983. And then I worked for Dale Maddox while he had it, and I worked a little bit for Herwick and Schmink. And I quit there to take over my uncle's ranch that needed help, and that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
You're still standing. Hey, Jerry.
Huh?
Jerry, who are you and where are you from?
I forgot that. I'll get my driver's license and I'll tell you. I'm Jerry Hammerquist. I live on a ranch there east of Caputa. Hammerquist's name on the ranch has been 140 years and counting. So, we're getting her paid off, though.
Hi, I'm Jody Lerkamp, used to be Barkley, and I worked yard back and a lot of other places around there. And when I came back after my kids had got into school, I got to work with Billy Demerly, writing tickets, and learned a lot from Billy. Maybe not so good things, but anyway. Karen sent this out, and I was thinking some of the best things about working at the sale barn were the people. Some of the worst things about the sale barn was the train. Along the yard back, it would run cattle through the pens. Okay.
He's talking about the train. Gene Thompson, for a while, he run yard back from Crow's Nest. And somewhere along the line, the show Fantasy Island started up. And anyway, it was always the plane, little guy. But Gene, he could see a long ways up that Crow's Nest. Well, then he'd get to watch it for that train because it did have a lot of problems, broke out a lot of pens, done a lot, killed cattle, bad deal. But anyway, Gene got to hollering when the train, he could see it come for half a mile away, and he'd holler out, the train. It's kind of a standing joke.
Then the jokes. There's just 2 short stories. One of the sorters, long ago, back in the 80s, had an issue with an auctioneer that would open the back window on the block and he'd just start yelling and hollering at all the sorters. Well, one night I saw him going across one catwalk down through the alleyway and up another catwalk down through the other alleyway. And the window was open, but he was halfway through it trying to pull the auctioneer out into the sorting alley. Yeah, it was. And then he caught me one night when the same auctioneer would ring the buzzer to have the out gate open and just continually ring. And if we weren't opening up, we were jammed up with cattle and couldn't move. And I had took my horse and stood on top of the saddle and pulled the wires out of the bell. Anyway.
I'm Daryl Steffes. I started working there when I was in high school. Started out in the yard back, worked there for a few years, and then got promoted or demoted, whatever you want to call it, into the ring. Which I enjoyed every aspect of that sale barn. The people you worked with, it really wasn't a job. To me, it was fun every day, no matter where you was at. And, there was, I can't remember a bad memory there. A lot of good memories there, and mostly with people. And working in that ring, it got to where, it got to be a contest between me and Tom Miller. He rode the ring, I run the gate. I'm guessing the weight on the cattle. And it surprised you, we got pretty doggone good at it. And we counted, our job was to count the cattle in the ring. And so that, they get proper weight on it. And Tom, he'd circle them around there, and then there would be an outman, and I'd let the next bunch in. But anyway, when Lynn come to the auctioneer there, then things started happening. He liked to have a snappy auction going. Even when one was going out, he wanted the next one coming in. Heck, he hardly ever stopped auctioning, Things really happened. As long as they could get them penned, he could get them sold. And, like I say, we had a lot of fun in there. Tom, he was kind of a prankster every now and then. So you try to get a hold of him, and when he wasn't paying attention, I'd kind of loosen his cinch up every now and then. Never did get him on the ground, but I got him loosened up. But that sale barn was a big part of this town at the time. When it closed, in my opinion, the town just kind of went to hell. When that was Wednesday, was the time everybody come to town. And the guys that built the sale barn, the women might go shopping or do whatever. And heck, they'd go out for supper that night before they went home. And there was, 2 or 3 clothing stores, hardware stores, drug stores. Every dead gum building on Main Street had a business in it. And a lot of times they'd stay open a little bit longer on Wednesday. But that was just a day when you come to town, even if you didn't have business, you come to town anyway. Go up to the sale barn, and ahead of the sale, there was a few people that got in there and played a few hands of cards.
Not only that, Daryl, but look at all them old ranchers that need a little extra money in the fall. They'd come in and work sale days because they didn't have enough money to get through the winter.
Oh, that's what most of the employees out there were ranchers from out of town. I mean, 95% of them, I bet, were ranchers and people that were trying to pick up an extra dollar. And it did. It went a long ways. But anyway, that's kind of all I can say about it. I enjoyed every year I was there. Well, I was there through 4, I guess, owners. I was there when I started when Jim had it, and then went to Dale Maddox, and Jim Smink and Jack Horwick, and then Paul, Laurel got it, and Paul there, first year he had it there, that was winter. I mean, that was 85, I believe, and we had a winter. I mean, that winter was tough. Anyway, I think it was December, and he had a Sunday horse sale, and it was like 20-some below. However much 3 feet of snow, and I thought, well, I'll give him a call there, because probably ain't gonna have a sale, and if it does, well, I ain't gonna have to go in. So I calls him up, and he said, yeah, we're gonna have a sale. And he said, yeah, I sure could use you. So I went and took the battery out of my pickup, took it in the house and warmed it up. Shoveled a little snow so I could get out, and away I went to town, got to town, and we had a sale, had 11 head of horses. Sale didn't last long, we had a good time.
Nice job, Daryl, nice job. Karen, I'm gonna introduce myself, then I'm gonna sit down while I make a few comments. My old hip bothers me a little bit. My name is Lynn Weisar. I'd like to present my wife, Connie. She's the luckiest woman here. She's been married to me for 55 years. That's very lucky. But anyway, the history, Daryl touched on so many things. One, of course, I didn't know what I was gonna talk about. They said they have a sale here every Wednesday. And it was a place to go. They talk about the old ranchers coming to town, and of course, big old glass doors, beautiful facility, wooden benches inside each door, and full of old timers. I'm sitting there and listening to them. Today, exactly like this, windy the devil. One of them old timers come in and says, "Sure is windy out." The other one, "They have a sale here every Wednesday." Well, the next guy, he decided he was probably gonna buy him coffee. "Are you thirsty?" "Thursday? Damn it, I just told you it was Wednesday." But that is a fact, that is a true story. But gosh, the things that we can talk about and Paul get into, and we've had guns pulled on him. We've had Paul jumping over ring, throwing guys out of the ring and out of the sale barn. One of the buyers comes walking in and he tells the guy that Paul threw out, "Don't go in there, don't go in there, there's a crazy man in it. There's a crazy man in it." But the strength of that sale was the family. And I mean, the yard back, everybody, they had responsibility, they took care of their job. It's some of the best memories I ever had. Daryl hit it on really a lot. I know Paul's got a big book to talk about. This guy in front of me, he used to, our veterinarian, we thought he was anyway. But he'd dress up cows, Halloween, they'd come in, the horse get scared, they'd have sheets over them, they'd have cottontail ears or whatever. I mean, we just had a lot of fun with everybody. Terrific set of buyers, but the relationship with the people was always the best. And some of the best memories I'll have will be in Sturgis Livestock. I don't know, Paul probably talking about the gun, or do you want me to go ahead with it?
You go ahead.
Anyway, we got this guy sitting in the front row, and these are true stories. And he's buying bulls, he's buying cancer-eyed cows, he's buying heiferettes, and he's buying anything walks in, putting in the same pen. So I can't remember if I tell Paul Speed, I said, "You better get Paul Schultes in here, there's something wrong, this don't make sense." So Paul comes in here, and he gets a hold of the guy and says, "You gotta come to the office and get some more information on your credit." Well, about an hour later, here comes this guy in with a Jesse James coat. He's got a lever action rifle, and he goes to the top, and this place is packed. And of course, I'm D. Schulteis clerk, and I said, "D, if that gun comes to his shoulder, you're gonna have the first one to go. We better fall over or do something." Well, anyway, got cops all over it, but not inside the building. They said, "If we go in there, he'll probably start shooting." Anyway, Paul and all the men don't have any guts, so we get old Karen Speed, and she runs up there and grabs the guy and jerks him out of there. That is a true story. Paul to dress it up. Us men were scared to death. We got to tell you what we do. What else can I tell about? Oh, one of the things that tell everybody right after the sale, guys like Daryl and I, we'd come right here to the library. Connie always thought most of the sales lasted till 2 in the morning, so I don't understand what she was thinking. I'll tell you one thing, some of the best people in the world, absolutely, were right here. Thank you much, and Karen, thank you so much for having us. Paul?
Thank you, and we had some of the best times. Well, I'd like to introduce my wonderful wife, Laurel. Anyway, stand up, Laurel. Anyway. She's stuck with me for almost 50 years, and I'll bet sometimes it wasn't easy. But I'm going to introduce myself, Paul Schultes. I am guaranteed to be the brokest man that ever owned a sale barn in Sturgis. But I didn't realize it. My pockets are always full of money. I can shoe horses. I mean, I never was broke. Except the money I owed the bank, lots of it. Come to Sturgis, and pretty soon Dale Hansen, the city attorney, he's trying to tell me that I'm probably worth less than zero. And the bankers won't even talk to me. But I had made a deal to buy it. And I had had a cache of silver at home since I was a kid. That took care of about half of it. And we made a small down payment on there. And I'm there and I know nothing. I was auctioneer at 2 sale barns up in Montana and traded horses like crazy, sold horses all over. We had Indian friends and white friends, but I didn't know anything. So I come to Sturgis, and I'll tell you, we were surrounded by smart men. There was Daryl Hoare, there was Lynn Weidauer, there was Wayne Anderson, there was, you can't believe the intelligence I was surrounded by, and you can't be dumb around them guys. One bid past what they bid, you're not in very, very deep trouble. So I just went to buying cattle, and I'd send them, sometimes they'd sell them Black Hills pack, and I'd pay too much for them. And they'd lose $30, so I wouldn't support the market near as high the next week. So finally, I tell Lynn, you just run like a kid on a new bike till $2 under what every critter's worth, and I'll own them if somebody else don't want to. Because I could use the $50. We played that way for years. Sometimes we'd have pens full of cattle, sometimes we'd have none. But I didn't have any knowledge of what was going on. But we went after it. But that was the cattlemen there. They knew a lot, and I didn't. But I was learning fast. And then it was 1985 and 86. In that time, I'd say close to half the businesses and ranches were in horrible financial condition. The dairy buyout took all the cows out of there. There was 15,000 dairy cows in Meade County when I moved here. None left after a dairy buyout. No hogs, virtually no hogs. Anyway, fuel was 85 cents. Semis go down the road, charge you $1 a mile, sometimes 85. Ranch land was $30 to $70 an acre, and I bought about 14,000 acres of the worthless stuff. And it's been fun. So I knew nothing about cattle, but I knew quite a little about horses. So we started the horse sale. I don't remember the 11-head sale. I remember the first sale at about 100 head. It was one of my first sales. Well, I don't know. I gotta look at my notes so I don't get flagged. But I was mainly in the horse business. And I mean, $300,000 back in 1980, 81, 82 could buy all the good horses out of Montana, western North Dakota, and I owned them. They had to come to my place to buy them. We had brokerage license to go to Canada, and pretty soon I had horse friends all over the place. We were buying them, and the Canada horse market was totally controlled by the cartel. My wife and I even stayed at the big boss's place overnight a few times. And so we started the sales, 100 head horse sale. And I told the guys, hey, we're gonna sell all the horses. I knew what horses were worth, and I knew what the buyers were stealing them for. We started out getting double money of any other sale barn. 6 years we were the largest horse sale in North America. 6,000 head a year, a lot of sales, 500 head. Couldn't believe it. We went from selling almost nothing to the biggest sale in America. And I still didn't know why or what happened. Well then, I had to make payments on the sale barn. I can't do that. But I had friends up in Montana, Wolf Point, Montana, Glasgow, Billings. They followed us down to Sturgis by the hundreds. Do you remember all the Montana cattle started coming down? Anyway, just like a blessing from God, we got the down payment paid off. When I started the horse sale, I got warned by everybody. The bankers, the lawyers, the accountants, and many friends says, you can't depend on a horse sale. There'll be bad checks, there'll be fly-by-night buyers, horse traders, and all this kind of stuff. When our horses were bringing double what they were most places, we pretty well sold them all. I don't know if very many horses sold. So that's the way the horse deal went. The cattle deal was our living. That was our living. We sold cattle for a living. Weekends were off, but not at our place. We had horse sales. And that was fun.
Paul, was it one time, didn't we sell, help me out, was it, Randy's had that adoption, didn't we sell like 1,500 head of horses just for one man?
Yeah, that's, okay, it was 1,200 head, but two different sales. But the big sale I got, I just checked it out, it was 1,375 horses. about 250 saddle horses, the rest are canters. Wow, it went 2 days plus 1 night. 2 days and a night. 1,375 horses. Well, then the rumors started going around, there'd been 4,000 cattle there, never that many outfits in town before, so all the old timers, I don't know if any of them are still living here, but the rumors going around, we'd sold 5,000 horses that day. Well, from the traffic and the outfits around, it looked like it. It felt like it too. Anyway, I'm trying not to get off track here. Wrote some things down. Anyway, we were just blessed with 10 of the best years we could ever have. My wonderful wife, so much support, so many close friends, so many friends. The business community was so good to us. And then we put on the Sturgis Rodeo, and now I'm going to give you a little object lesson here. Sturgis Rodeo was a success. The first 2 years, 500 contestants, the next year, 700 contestants. Second biggest rodeo in the state of South Dakota, SDRA. Okay, I didn't follow no rules. It was, and we bucked the stock till they couldn't buck no more. And we had a bucking horse sale, and we had a bull sale. Plus we sold horses for 2 solid days while the rodeo was going on. Well, all of a sudden, I'm not gonna mention any names, a bunch of big businesses they wanted to sponsor. But they couldn't sponsor unless we was a profit-free 501(c)(3) nonprofit organization. So, it cost me $2,500 to give away my $11,000 we made. Yeah, we made a nonprofit corporation. It was a nonprofit corporation. So that's my lesson in communism, socialism, or what the hell you want to call it. But, don't take partners. You know, kind of stand on their own. It's hard. I got wide shoulders, and I took always accepted the blame I got. Somebody just told me today that people like to blame, and I hope that I'm not guilty of it. And now it goes down, times change, but your memories and your friends don't. Today I buy more cattle online today than we ever did at the sale barn in Sturgis. I've got 6 buyers and 26 sale barns, and I don't have no money. It just rolls over. It just rolls over. And we got the 14 grandkids on the ranch, and it is fun. Here's
I'm John Ismay, and I was at the veterinarian at the sale barn for, 35 years. And I wasn't always, I had somebody else working for me part of the time, but I showed up there about 1971.
Mike, read directional order.
Oh, okay. Okay, so anyway, I came in 1971 and went to work for Dr. Hannafy. He owned the practice at that time, and then I bought him out after a year, and we always had a good time at the sale barn, but these guys don't remember, maybe they remember, but they're not talking too much about the horrible weather and everything else that went on. But we all have a tendency to forget that kind of stuff, so we just remember the good stuff. And Bonnie and
Travis.
and all of us, my family, we work together, and they work their guts out at the sale barn. So anyway, my idea was not always just to, my idea was I wanted to be a horse veterinarian, and that's why I went to vet school. And after a while, I worked hard enough where I could do just that, and And we, I remember one time, we were talking about that cow that we dressed up at Halloween, you know, and Travis and all of us, we wanted, we put a dress on her and put lipstick and wig and we taped overshoes on her feet. And she had like kind of like one of them Hawaiian dresses. And I'm not kidding you, when she came in the ring, Bob Queen, he was riding in the ring, and that horse laid down on his belly, his eyes were, he looked like a Volkswagen. He laid right down on his belly, and that's the scariest I ever saw a horse. And then, and I got a little scared after that because Lynn got pissed off. But anyway, I thought it was funny. And another time, it was night, it was really late, and they were selling way-up cows, and so I thought this is going to get boring, and I got a big old cigar and sucked on that thing for a while, and the end was really nice and red, and I just went it over to the ring and tossed it over into the ring and put it like this. And this got pissed off again. I pretty much kept him that way, but no, he's and you know what I liked about working after Paul bought the sale barn was, like he said, he never blamed anybody. Whenever things go wrong, they always do, and Paul just figured out, we just had to figure out where we're gonna fix it, and made the sale barn awful good. You can't believe how good that was. So, I just, there's a couple other stories I was gonna tell you, but I don't wanna bore you with, well, maybe I'll tell you one. One time, I had another guy working for him, another veterinarian working for him at the sale barn, and I was riding this horse, he's half saddlebred, and I don't know what else, maybe mountain lion. Anyway, he had white eyes, and he was born mad. He just came out mad. He just, ears were laid back, and from the time he was a colt, he was that way. But anyway, I had to go up north and look at some cows, so I thought I'd better get some miles on him, at least a little bit. So I rode him in the yard back there that afternoon and opened gates on him and stuff. And I could ride him all right, but I was going by the front of the sale barn. It was dark by then, and Brian Barber was out front of the sale barn. He said, "I bet you can't ride that thing in the sale barn." I said, "Well, throw the gate open, the door open, let's see." So I rode him in this kind of a hallway, and the vet office was right there, so I reached down and opened the doorknob, and of course the door opened, and the veterinarian was working for me. There was a slack time, so he was asleep on the couch there, and he threw his arms up like that, and the horse got scared back across the hallway into the woman's bathroom. There were still women in there, and they were screaming, "He's going to kill us." And I said, "I think you will." So anyway, I kept the door open as good as I could, and I spurred him in the belly, and he jumped out in the hall and started bucking down the hallway. Had a suspended ceiling, kind of like this, and I saw what it looked like up in the back. But anyway, he had boring shoes on, he scratched the floor all up, and it was not funny. So the guy that owned the sale barn right after Paul was there, and another time I smoked this little cigar, and it was turned at like, give it a 7. And so he said, "Get that horse out of here." I said, "You get him out of here if you think you can." So anyway, that cost me a little bit, that one. So, but anyway, we really did have a lot of fun. We were long hours and hard work, but anyway, we remember the good times.
I'm Brad Severson. I started in 1975, I guess, in the fall. I was there 25 years. Kind of started in yard back sale days, and then just kind of stayed on and started working full time. And then I don't know what year it was, Paul took over and Bill retired, good old Billy. And I got the foreman job, and I'd done that for 12 years. Stayed till just about when the doors shut, but not quite. A lot of fun, a lot lot of hard work. A lot of dangerous stuff. You guys know that.
Yeah.
Probably why I'm so crippled up, probably. One thing I really wanted to say is I want to thank Karen and Richard and Bonnie. They went to a lot of work for this deal. I just got in on a little bit of it. It was kind of during cabin and storms and everything, but these people went to a lot of work. And I'm glad they did, because it's a lot of memories and a lot of people. Actually, this is nice. Yeah. Laurel, she wanted me to mention one story that she was laughing about. Back, Paul and Laurel on vacation. Well, we had supposed to have 200 pairs coming in for sale on a Monday. And so it'd take a couple days to sort them up. John had to do the work on them and everything. I'm gonna sit down. But anyway, those people called on Tuesday morning, sales on Wednesday, and they said we aren't coming with the cattle. And so done a lot of advertising, had extra help coming, just a lot of things went on before that stuff come in. And so Ray Heupel was there at the time, so him and I loaded up in the pickup and went out to this guy's place. And finally talked to him, and they was going to take half of them to Fort Pierre, and they was going to bring half of them. This is Tuesday afternoon. Like I said, sales on Wednesday. John and his crew had to work them yet. We had to sort them up. And so then it got to raining in the evening. So we took them all to the sorting alley, and we worked all night. In fact, it was just the start of the sale on Wednesday. And none of us had been home sleeping. We would just go till light. Anyway, Paul, he come out, and I'm just going to the tack room for something, and he come in there. There was a buyer that I won't mention name, but I didn't get along with him, and I never did. But anyway, Paul come in, and he says, say, his cattle didn't get fed this morning. And I turned around to Paul, and I was pretty short fused by then, hadn't any sleep for a couple of days. I told Paul, I said, you know, Paul, I really don't give a shit. So he digs in his billfold and gives me $100 bill, and he says, this help? And I said, yeah, it'll help. We go up on the catwalk, we're running up these pairs now up on the catwalk because I had certain pens I wanted to go in a certain order. And anyway, this buyer, he come out on the catwalk and he decided he was going to put in his 2 cents on this deal because his cattle hadn't been fed. And I'm pretty short fused when I get no sleep. And anyway, he's going down the catwalk and kind of talking behind my back. And so I take the sorting stick and I'm just kind of shaking at him and talking along. And he's running out of room because he's getting in the catwalk and he can't go nowhere but down. So the sorters, and I see some of them here, yeah, and they're standing down there and sorting now, and they're laughing and clapping. They think this is quite a deal because nobody could really get along with this buyer. Like I said, I'm not mentioning any names, but Laurel, she's sitting there and says, you gotta tell that story. And there's a lot more, but I won't get into that.
Brad. Excuse me, Daryl. I'll tell one reason why Brad's crippled. He'd be at the far end of the pen, where the pen cattle, at the very far end. Paul Schultz said, oh, we need Brad. Brad would come running, gates were all closed. He never once opened the gate, one-handed, leaped over every single gate, didn't he, Paul?
Yeah.
I mean, never touched him either. Now you're wondering why you're lame.
I found out through the years that we got put in a 2 7/8 pipe, and I found out I wasn't agile as I thought, because I thought I could get up and walk on that pipe instead of trying to work through the cattle, but that only worked once.
Thank you, Karen. Radio check, can you hear clear in the back?
Yep.
Raise your hand if you can hear all right. Okay. Well, just to give you a little history before Sturgis Livestock was built, You know, back in the early days, this would be pre-war, you shipped by rail. You had a roundup and you drove to your railhead and you ordered so many cars ahead of time and you shipped them to Sioux City or Omaha. And you had to know when the passenger trains were gonna be coming by too, because if you were about ready to drive them into the stockyards and here come a passenger train, the old conductors enjoyed the engineers hitting that old horn and you had to stampede going wherever. So you had to make sure you figured that out. And I don't know whether any of you were ever involved in that, but all the Hereford bulls had to be tied to the car. So you'd spot the car and put the Hereford bulls in, and imagine now, snubbing that bull up inside the car and then tying him to the side so he didn't injure any of the other cattle in the car. Kind of an interesting deal. Then, after the rail roundups like that, and any odd and ends that you had left over that would not fit in a car, then there's cattle traders come by, no scales, they bought them by the head, and some of them, they ended up, you get a bad check, you had to pass them through a couple times, and they operated on the float, so that was always a problem in the country. Well then, after that, then the auctions come in after the war. When was Sturgis Livestock built?
1944.
44. War was over in 45.
I worked there.
Introduce yourself.
So
Introduce yourself.
I'm Dwayne Hayes, and I was a freshman in high school when it started, and the building was originally in Whitewood, and they moved it to Sturgis.
That's right.
Jim Madden owned it, of course. And my job was to, after they sold the cattle, was to help pen them. And Norway Hansen was the shoot boss, I guess, at that time. He was a gruff old boy, but a good guy. And he'd tell us where to pen those cattle. They'd let us out of school on Wednesdays to work at the sale barn. I was probably I was probably the first employee that they had.
Thank you.
And I made a lot of money.
Thank you. So the first auctions then come in after the war, and some had problems because there was no place to look for experience. They were all on their own. There wasn't any other, not an auction ahead of that. And then some of them got into trouble. They get into the custodial account, which was the money of the consigners, so they had a few problems in that respect. As the highways become better, trucking become better, you could truck cattle out of Sturgis and have them in an Iowa Corn Belt area overnight, or the railroad would take 2 or 3 days, so you didn't need a railroad. That was the end of that. I started coming to the Sturgis Livestock in 1960, and at that time Harley Roth and Jim Madden ran it. And Jim made an agreement with Harley, and Harley bought Jim out, and Jim signed an agreement he wouldn't start another auction in a certain amount of distance or perimeter for so many years. Well, there's a co-op, among other whatever, went up and built the St. Ange stockyards and then hired Jim to run it. And I was there when they loads and loads of plank come in, when they built all the yards out of wood there at St. Ange. The Harley loved, some of you have probably heard the story, of course that'd be Jim's dad, Harley. Harley loved his saddle broncs. And when I was a kid, this would be back in the early 40s probably, he would have the saddle bronc buck off at the Oxoak Ranch at Nemo. And the guys, that was Casey Tibbs' days, and the Tesher boys out of Sentinel Butte, North Dakota, and that was really something to see. Born and raised in the old Sagebrush Flats down in Provo country. Harley good friend was Jiggs Thompson. Jiggs Thompson was a saddle bronc rider from Mule Creek Junction. And Harley and Jiggs Thompson were coming back from the Denver Stock Show, and the plane went down on the Wyoming Hereford Ranch east of Cheyenne and killed them both. And Juanita was settling up with me of the cattle I bought that day when the word comes through. That was a pretty somber sale at the end of that day. Then Jim took over after Harley got killed. Then he put in the state-of-the-art sale barn. One of the best ring scales in the country. I have bought been in and bought cattle out of 13 states and 3 provinces. And the best ring scale of all of them was Sturgis Livestock. Cattle come, some of them tried to configure their ring scale with the old ring, and they have to come in and out, or whatever, it just didn't work that good. Sturgis come in and out, one end, out the other. I would say that the Sturgis sale barn that would come under the word majestic. All the other sale barns I went to, is nothing like coming to Sturgis. That was always a majestic situation. And Juanito, you know, back then you didn't have no cell phones or nothing, so they'd give your name and or, you know, road line such and such, and you went to the phone booth. She had never put my name over the speaker. And I said to Juanito, "What's the deal?" I said, "You always said you have to say Black Hills telephone." She said, that speaker system goes clear downtown, and I don't want anybody down there figuring out what we're running up here. Put more on that speaker system. Of course, there was Freddie. Freddie, she was one of the best clerks of any sale barn you ever want to go to. She would take the scale tickets, put them in the tubes were about that long, and they went through the suction tubes to the office where they'd take the scale tickets out and send them back. And let's see what I was going to say. Oh, when long sales, Sturgis would call Bill Foosh and tell them when the sale was over, so they could hold up for the buyers to get there. And then they do the same. Bill would call St. Anne's the same way. Otherwise, the sale might start at 8 o'clock, and Bell, they had to hold up, and this was an all-night sale. The longest stint I ever had was 44 hours. Never went to bed. Long sales, and then they put the shavings in the ring and the turpentine on that, blending with the tobacco smoke, and a lot of those old timers smoked cigars at ringside. And you got home and your eyes like 2 pea holes in a snowbank. That turpentine and that smoke was just pretty good to you. Remember Cecil Hurley? You remember him? He used to come to Sturgis Livestock. He was a huge buyer of cattle in the Centerfield area down by Sioux Falls. And one time I was going into the barn, he was coming out, and he said, "Darryl, can I get you a cup of coffee?" And I said, "No, I don't drink coffee." He said, "Do you have any vices?" I said, "Yeah, I chase women." He said, "You're going to make a good cattle bar." Well, there was I can remember all the auctioneers, Charlie Hawks. He was the first one I can remember at Sturgis. Bud Knight, Dale Maddox, Lynn Weisar, Paul Speed, and of course then Paul sold some cattle too when he's over there, Paul Scholtes. It was always a pleasure to come to Sturgis Livestock. And it was only 40 miles or 45 miles to the plant. Back in before the one-way, whatever, the tourists would come, it'd take you over an hour to get up here to sale. Because they'd be driving 30, 35 miles an hour. The gooseneck trailer. I should have invented that. 2 things I missed in my lifetime. One was the hula hoop and the gooseneck trailer. Gooseneck trailer completely changed the marketing of cattle. The guy could load on whatever had on that gooseneck trailer versus the bumper whipper trailers, and they weren't safe. Drop a wheel over the shoulder of the road and boom, boom, pretty soon you're upside down. But the gooseneck, he could load whatever he wanted to sell. Didn't have to wait, throw a bull in, cow, whatever, give it to the wife, the hired man, or one of the kids, and they'd drive there. And then the barns put the drive-through deals to unload, which they changed the marketing of the small lots of cattle in the entire West. I got to tell you an interesting story. When Jim and Juanita put in the ring scale, on the west side of the ring, they put in a phone booth, which is noise was down, it cut down the decibels a little bit, and you could go in there and had a shelf like this, and you could do your paperwork, and you hit a button and you want a bid, and that light would come on, and the auctioneer then could see that light and take your bid. Well, I went in to make a phone call, and I went to the door, and I pushed, and it didn't go no place. So I pushed a little harder, and this little voice said, "Just a minute, mister, he's not done yet." I don't know who these kids were, but one's, the last name was Isme and one was Shorty. Finally, the door flew open and them little buggers were running out like a couple of scared cats. And there was a big number 2 right in the front. Every call, Edward smell at it. That's a true story. So just a minute, mister, he ain't done yet. So anyway, all the operators from the Jack Speak and Richard Horwick, but you take the Harley Roth was quite an individual. He was a very colorful guy. I loved his saddle broncs, and of course Jiggs Thompson went down with him. Was one of the saddle bronc riders in that area down there. That Mill Creek Junction, Edgemont Country, and so Harley was drawn to him. But Harley was very much a showman. He was an entrepreneur, kind of ahead of his time. But anything he had to do with saddle broncs, it was going to be good. I guess just thank you very much, appreciate it, and thanks for putting this on.
Thanks, Daryl, and thanks to all the panel. Now Richard's going to do the slideshow, and he's going to present some history. And the panel, including the panel and the audience, if you want to make brief comments, if you see something on the slideshow that you want to make a brief comment, please do, because it's going to be a slideshow with the history, and there's going to be some pictures one picture for sure that we don't know about. So here's Richard now.
All right. First of all, Karen and I was talking before this, said if we ever give the microphone to that panel, it's going to take 45 minutes. It's going to 5 minutes please. Well, we're now at 54 minutes. All right. I'm a history geek or whatever you want to call it. So this was a lot of fun. I dove into that book that was about 6 inches thick, and had somebody help me pull it apart. And started going through it, and it's like, we got to talk about some of this stuff here. So that's familiar. It's scarf. History. Yeah. That's the list of owners, and Sharon got this from the Register of Deeds, is that correct? So some of the numbers, when I was actually going through some of the history of the numbers, the years might be off by a year, which I think that would kind of make sense sometimes. But that's kind of a basic rundown of the owners.
Richard?
Yes?
I'll talk loud, but anyway, Paul always claimed that they could never get rid of me as an employee, so they just have to sell it to somebody else. That was right.
Yeah, there you go. This picture actually has, it is the 1914 Meade County Fair. And the old Sturgis Livestock building was originally the Sturgis Exhibit building from the fairgrounds, pictured to the right. So if you look to the right, you can barely see it on the edge of the picture.
It's round.
It was kind of a round, go clear to the right. More clear right there, right almost on the edge. That was, this picture this is from Matapaha, Land of the Pioneer, in 1914 Sturgis Fair. So it had been there at least 28 years when it was moved to the sale barn location. Now this picture, there's a little bit of delay in this, I'm not sure why. There we go. The original founders of the livestock business was Max I'm gonna murder these names, I know I am. Chef Bill Anderson, Russ Bowden, Tommy Thompson, and Jess, okay, I'm gonna try it. Tommy Thompson and Max Schiff met with the Sturgis Chamber of Commerce in 1944 about the possibility of opening a livestock auction market here. The Meade County Commission donated that building to the livestock business. They then bought the livestock market in Whitewood, closed it, and the yards were hauled from there for the Sturgis facility. Okay, and then that's a couple of ads from the original sale was August 15th of 44. And then it looks like maybe by October, they moved it to Wednesday, went from Tuesday to Wednesday. So, this next picture, okay, that's an aerial view of it from, in 1945. There's a pavilion that was moved there from the Meade County Prison Fairgrounds. There we go. This one is, if you notice on the right-hand side there, whoops, let me just, I think I hit the wrong button on here. And just exited out of my program.
Paul Schultz is your computer expert, we'll fix it.
Yeah. Anyway, the image on the side there talked about in 1948 they had sales of almost $8 million. So you gotta figure that was 4 years in. $8 million would have been a lot of money in 48. A lot of.
Just this morning, there was 500 and some pound heifer calves sold for $1,800 a piece, $3.30 some cents a pound. We
Right.
sold lots of heifer calves back in '85 for 50 cents a pound,
We
60
lost
cents a pound.
our slideshow.
Were you one of the kids?
There we go. Now, this picture is a bit of history, but I kind of, a couple of things I kind of pieced together. I'm wondering if there was a remodel in 1957 and a new lobby and cafe was constructed. So I was wondering if there might be anybody in the crowd that can either confirm or not.
Confirm or deny.
Yeah, this, my speculation on that. But yeah, so that, it's obviously there's something added on to the front there that wasn't, you're onto the front of the pavilion, so.
Richard, take a look at, I mean, do you see a pickup there at
Right,
all?
yeah, and that's kind of what we
It's
need.
all cars.
It is all cars, so it's some kind of an open house.
Yeah.
So that's what that's my speculation on that. In 1961, they mentioned this, Harley Roth was killed in an airplane accident. So son Jim Roth ran the business until '72. Under the management of Jim Roth, an expansion and remodel program took place in 1966, including a 15 by 52 foot scale comprised the entire floor of the ring, an electronic weight divider above the auction block, displaying the head count, average weight, and total weight. This was the second of its kind in the nation at the time. An added feature included a mural dedicated to the finest people in America, the cattlemen, on the north wall of the auction pavilion. That was in that previous picture. The pavilion there in the top right seated 400 people. I think that'd be a good church service. A pneumatic tube system relayed lot tickets from the west gate of the ring to the auction block, and another set of weight tickets from the auction block to the central office. A 70-foot enclosed catwalk connected the pavilion and the yards. The auction employed 40 people at that time, and in that year, in '67, over $200 million crossed the counter. So that's still, that just seems like a lot of money now. Okay, this was a poster that Karen sent to me. The only thing, I'm not sure the date on this poster, but Dale Maddox, Charlie Hawks is pictured here. They shared the auctioneer's microphone, and Dale eventually became owner in '73.
Ollie, do you know when this was taken?
No. When, it has a date up there when we moved to Sturgis. Wasn't that 66?
I think so.
And I'm guessing that was, it was 66.
I wanted to read this because I thought it was interesting. This was Laurel. I found an article that, I think this was from the 44th, when the, some kind of 44th celebration or year that you had written this. It was a lifelong dream of Paul's to own a sale barn, even though I really didn't know about it. We had come to the Black Hills to deliver racehorses from our Montana ranch to Rapid City. On our way back, we stopped at a real estate office in Bellevue to shop, as usual, for ranches. The subject of livestock market was discussed. Then within an hour, we had driven back to Sturgis. It happened to be sale day. So we looked around a little, and within 20 minutes, Paul said, "I want it." Is that true?
Absolutely true.
Yeah, there you go.
We had it by that night.
Yeah, yep. I just laughed and said, when did this all come about? And that's when I learned about the lifelong dream. We called the real estate office back and set a meeting for that afternoon and wrote up a contract that evening and basically purchased it by the next day. Within 20 days, we had gone to Montana, finished our harvesting, sold our cattle, horses, and farm machinery, packed and headed for our new adventure, Sturgis. You guys that did a lot in 20 days. That was miraculous.
Richard, can I say something?
Yep, go ahead.
About Laurel. One year, somebody was on Easter week, and somebody was bringing in a couple potloads of cow-calf pear. And this was, they brought them in on a Sunday, snowing, flakes big as a silver dollar, and getting deep. And anyway, the crew, they were kind of bummed because, you know, it was Easter Sunday, and we gotta be sorting pears out there for a couple days, and snowing, and nice, no wind, but snowing, and the snow was getting deep. And Laurel, the goodness of her heart, she went and got a turkey and fixed it over at the buffet just so we had Easter dinner.
Okay, yeah, this is kind of a, sure some of you remember this one.
Oh, yeah.
I'll probably have maybe Karen or any of you guys want to interject on this. I'm sure there's some stories on this one.
Go ahead, whoever wants to interject, go ahead, this is one of the cattle got, yeah.
That was that short lady you had tied to a tree somewhere.
Jody,
Yeah.
you remember?
No, yeah, Dana was involved with this a lot.
You're gonna have to tell me to shut up, Karen, but this
Uh,
kind of reminds me, one year we had a cow get out on sale day, and so Dana and I, we was riding horseback, and the cow's headed down Junction Avenue. So we bail in, get out, and we're running horseback down the pavement down there, trying to catch this cow. She finally did elude us, she got away, got out of town. Anyway, Dana and I were riding down the street, ropes drawn and ready, we find this cow, and people were coming by and say, well, it's on this street, it's on this street. And this little old lady, she come out of her house, and she's out there like this, and wobbling around, and we go by, and she says, oh, I haven't seen this since the 1940s. No, that was a rodeo bull.
So yeah, this one is, yeah, that's when it was,
That was
it
the
was
change
sold.
of ownership,
Yeah, change
yeah.
of ownership, yeah. Yeah.
Tell them who they are, Laurel. I mean, go ahead and tell who they are.
Yeah, it was, go ahead.
Richard and Ida Mae, and Paul and Laurel and Jack and Betty Smink. That's when they changed ownership, and Paul and Laurel got it. And on the other side is Billy Demerly. He was an icon, and his wife Shirley. He was the yard foreman for lots of years.
That says 40 years of service there, yeah.
20 days before that, I'm trying to get this deal done, so I offered Smink and Norwick $35,000 of silver. And they thought I must be some mafia guy, they just run like this. I had to take it all the way to Billings, Montana and bring back a fiat check. They wanted that check rather than the silver. Look what they'd have had today.
Yeah, sure enough. There on the left-hand side, there was for a short time, there was this is, I want to put down there because it kind of showed the connection between the sale barn and our community. Because for a short time, they had a courtesy shuttle to take the ranchers downtown, and then on the right-hand side, I had to ask, we were going through this, I had to ask Karen, I said, so what is selling livestock early? I mean, what is this? And it had, during times of drought. So that's just kind of the ups and downs of the market there. Then there was this little incident. A semi-truck tipped a guy wire causing a pole to topple and ruptured a transformer containing PCB. So there was all kinds of this cattle in the street. Yeah, that had to kind of.
That shut down the sale for a while.
You did?
I guess that's part of the article that I pulled some information off of. That's where I kind of got the information about some of the beginnings there. So then this is I think we're coming up to the last one. Oh yeah, that's the sale from Paul and Laurel to Walt Ridley. Is that right? Yeah. All right. So I read through that letter on the left. I kind of wanted to put that up there. Eventually, this will become a video, and people will be able to read through all that stuff as they go through the video, take pause it, whatever. So that's kind of want to put that up there because it was a nice letter. It was obvious it was a tough thing you guys did, but it's obvious you guys were very family. Everything was just, which that's this next one. There's the horse sale. Anybody want to talk about, well, I guess you kind of already talked about the horse sale, so I'm not sure we need to mention much more about that, but there was, I guess, some pretty spectacular horse sales there over the years, so.
Never a bad check on cattle, only one.
Whoops, I went too far.
Never a bad check on cattle, only one. The bad checks on horse sales, we had to lock the tack rooms, we had to collect the bad checks. When a rancher leads his cows and gets onto a horse, he's a different man.
All right.
Okay, Jerry?
Well, I just gonna
Here,
say,
wait a minute.
hadn't been mentioned
Yeah,
here,
let's
but I
use the
worked a
microphone.
lot of Saturdays. I worked a lot of Saturday sales in the fall. We sold calves. You got a list in the morning from Jim, the order. And I'll tell you what, if the order wasn't followed, the phone would ring and he'd say, what the hell's going on? I'd say, well, cattle aren't in yet. They're not all in, so we had, but I think there was around 8 or 9 sales in the fall every year. Some of the best prices ever, some of the best cattle ever, and it worked real well.
Thank you, Jerry.
Okay, this was the last sale day.
What's the date on that, Richard?
It was in '02, you know what? Shoot, I clipped out all of the dates at the top of the newspapers. It was in 2002. Okay, and on the left, this was out of the Argus Leader. So this was what they had wrote. Now, some of you might have a different opinion of this, but I'm going to read what they wrote, and then we can have a conversation about it. It's worth more to develop in the soaring Black Hills market than it is to ranchers in an up and down market. It's a complex blend of changing times and an economy based more on tourism than cows. According to them, the Sturgis Livestock Exchange at the time was solvent. the location had become an issue due to congestion on sale days as well. Outside of the economic impact, there is a cultural loss when a sale barn closes. Livestock barns are centers of coffee and conversation as well as commerce. During the last sale at Sturgis, those people crowded into the auctions, restaurant, Ranch House Cafe for the $4.50 roast beef special and coffee. You can't get that anymore, can you? Conversations range from memories about the exchange to the late snow to the profit of the meatpacking giant IBP. And then it's the people, the loyal ranchers, and the loyal workers, that's the hardest part about all of this, said co-owner Kathy McPherson. So that was what, the article there on the right is an excellent article done by the Rapid City Journal. It really talks about more about the people. I've got a printout over here. I can take time to read what's on there on the screen now, or we can move on. I guess that's, yeah. I think I'm going to move on because you'll be able to read that when it comes down to the video. So, a really nice article, like I said, the Journal did, that just talked about different people over the years, and actually I think Tommy Thompson, the son or grandson of one of the original starters, is mentioned in there several times, and it's the Billy, what's his last name? Yeah, was mentioned in there several times, and his wife was interviewed and all of that. So
Maybe if you could hold your thoughts till the very end about how Sturgis Livestock affected, when it closed, how it affected the Sturgis, the town of Sturgis. We could finish up with this slideshow and Brad's got, and then at the very end, we could like to have your thoughts on how you thought it affected the town of Sturgis at the very end of the slideshow.
okay, you want to talk about that a little bit, or you want to move on?
Oh, just briefly, we had a reunion, I think it was in 2008, and down at the Vets Club, and there was a incredible turnout. I had everybody that was there, it all signed the book and everything, and then Laurel had one, and Paul out to their ranch. And there's a lot of people in memory of, and I'm not gonna go through them, you can look at the book, but since that time, since I made that book, there's been a lot of people that have passed, since that time, and that was in 2008. I think there was like 150 people at the Vets Club, and we had a good time and had to have drivers out of town. So, go ahead, Richard, you and Brad.
Do you want that map out front? Is Brad?
What we're gonna do, I think what we can do is, Brad's gonna take us through a sale day. Because
Probably the biggest thing, when I got to putting this together, and it's not clone to scale, it's pretty close, but I got to look at that, and I thought, man, how the hell did we ever keep things up around there? A lot of them pens had hydrants, and back in the day, a lot of it was wood fences, and like Jody said, and train come by and bus corrals, and you always had plenty of things to do. You was getting ready for the next sale and fixing fence and haying. It makes you wonder, after looking at this, how did we ever keep up? And I guess I really don't know. We got to Paul when he come in, we got to put pipe in. That made quite a difference. In fact, my father-in-law, he was always talking about, I don't know why you're doing all that. He said, someday this sale barn won't be here anymore. And kind of figured, well, it needed to be done. So we just kept going till the day the deal was done, I guess. But that helped a lot. And then we switched over. It got to the point where used to be a lot of people who would haul in square bales. We used to put up a lot of hay, square bales, haul in ourselves.
40,000 one year.
Yeah. And then it kind of got to be where it was getting hard to have enough square bales, and you had so much money in them. And so we kind of got switching over the yards and putting in round bale feeders.
Before it was all over with, we didn't have any square bales. When finally shut the doors, there were no square bale feeders. It was all round bales. But anyway, this was the yards.
Want to go to the pictures?
Yeah, might as well.
Do people understand where the parking lot is? Did they tell on the back picture where the parking lot and where you unloaded and?
Yeah, we had three
Yeah.
truck chutes, semi-truck chutes. And then there used to be back in, if Bill was here, he could tell you, but back in the day, there used to be loadout chutes on the north end, and I think the EPA and that got involved in it, and that had to be shut down. So we had them 3 truck chutes, and then we had drive-through trailer chute. It was over on the west side, and I can't reach, over here somewhere. Anyway, that drive-through chute really made a difference. You know, a lot of people weren't used to backing the trailer up, so the drive-through chute really worked good. Probably one of the biggest problems we had through the years was the cattle deal. The ranches kind of outgrew the sale barn. Finally got so, you know, we could capacity, you know, we could, well, Paul, we, you know, 4,000 head, it was full. And and you'd get to them sales where, you know, you'd have more than that, and you had cattle unload, but you had an empty pen and sell some cattle to go to the other side, yard back, so that you could pen some more cattle. And pretty soon they were running out of pens for yard back, and we're running out of pens for penning things, and so that was kind of capacity. But we made it work. All these pens over from here over, this is yard back. This is the pens that got used after the sale. And the bigger sales, they would be following us over in these other pens. Wherever we had an empty pen, they would be coming with cattle.
Because we would mix calves with cows.
Yeah.
Too.
Yes.
Easier to store.
So, yeah. So yard back, they might be there till noon the next day, because the only way we could find enough pens is they'd mix calves with cows after the sale, and then when the sale was over with, they had to go and sort through all this stuff and pull calves off of cows or yearlings off of calves, or so it was a pretty dedicated crew. You didn't see that, still don't see that other places. That's all I'm gonna say about that, but.
All right, so.
This is unloading chutes. Well, that's Paul right there. He's either checking cattle in or they're going out. I don't know which. This is some of the yards. This is right down from the load in chutes, load out chutes. Back when we was feeding square bales then, but yeah, sorting cattle. Okay, and that's the Aldigo Alley. I guess we call it the Aldigo Alley. Sometimes if we, like in the fall runs, instead of taking cattle to the sorting alley, and we tried in the fall, we tried to at least sex the cattle out in the pens before they would go to the sorting alley. But this alley here, we call it the Aldigo Alley, simply because some of the bigger bunches are cattle that didn't have too many sorts on them. We'd try and sort them out in the alleys and into the pens out there. So when we got ready to go, they didn't have to go to the sorting alley. We just take them up that alley, avoid a little traffic and take some of the, and we'd always keep the sorting alley full too, but it's what worked trying to keep things going, I guess. I'm assuming probably a potload of calves. It depends on the year too. Some years you could kind of get by with mixing colors, mixing somewhat breeds. Sometimes when the buyers get more picky, you'd have to sort for colors. If you had one have a frozen ear or something, you had to pull it off. It just depended on the year. How the market would have to do a lot with it. Pretty good crowd.
There's 400-seat pavilion. Oh, there must be a horse sale.
Yeah, horse sale. We used to, I gotta tell you a little story here. I'm full of stories, but, back in the day, we had them horse sales, and a lot of people wanna bring them in. There's Dusty. A lot of people bring them in, well, they didn't wanna stick around. Usually there's a reason they didn't wanna ride on horse sale. Dana and I, Thompson, we rode a lot of them through. And we was pretty naive, I guess I should call it. Maybe just plumb stupid, I don't know. But people bring them in and got so, Dana and I, if they want them rode through, just ask them, you know, what was wrong? Did he buck? Was he crippled? What was the thing? And they, most of the time, they'd lie to you anyway, but, we'd ride them through, Dana and I'd ride them through for a $10 bill. We rode a lot of horses through. And I finally got to the point you just throw a saddle on them, cinch them up tight, and kick them in the side with one of the stirrups and see what they done. Yeah. And then, but the thing of it was, and I'll never forget this, and this is how stupid Dana and I were. We'd ride through 6 or 8 horses a piece for $60, $80 a piece. And after the sales were with, him and I'd buy the beer for everybody. Yeah, good for us. Yeah. Yeah. But anyway.
So now we're heading in after the sale, I think, right?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Richard. Okay, that's South Yard back. That's back when the elevator was still there. And that's one thing I was telling somebody this morning. I said I would probably be gone from this earth by now if that's the way it was, but Bill Demerly always talked about loading them railroad cars all night, and then the next day, and I would have just loved to have been around and seen that. Never was. And just more cattle probably for the sale.
There's a dog that sired the world champion cow dog.
Oh.
And now I own the dog that sired 2 last year's world champion cow dogs. Let's go back to 1999.
We, here I'm getting carried away again. We had for a little while, I don't know what the deal was, Philip was having hog sales before, there's still some hogs in the country, and they didn't sell them that summer, so we was selling hogs one summer at the sale barn. Well, nobody knew what we was doing, selling hogs, and they'd crawl from one pen to the next. But anyway, there was a truck driver, and he hauled strictly for Hobbs. Well, anyway, Hobbs was in there one day and bought a bunch of fat pigs ready to go to kill. And so this guy never hauled hogs, and we'd never loaded hogs. So he comes in, and we're trying to get these, and it was hot. The hogs wasn't wanting to load. It took us about 3 hours, and we finally got them going down in the belly of the truck. Well, looked out there after 3 hours, and here there ain't any hogs in the belly of the truck. We'd forgot to shut his side door. So they'd come in, and they was going out as fast as they was going in, and I thought that guy was going to sit down and bawl.
Anybody want to talk about these 2 pictures? Sure. That's the
John.
Don was talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah. I tried to go to it while he was talking, but I couldn't get there, so.
Brad, you got a volunteer back here.
Yes, somebody wants to say something.
Bernie.
Yes, that calf ended up in my house.
Did you buy him? Is that what?
Dad did.
Your dad did? I'll bet your dad laughed about that. He probably never even took the dress off, huh?
Took a while.
Yeah?
It was kind of an aerial view that we.
Yeah, no, that was, I was trying to put a year to it. Well, in the back of the chutes, that must be in the later years because the chutes are pipe. So that must have been in the, what, 90s, Paul? Somewhere in there.
You might want to jump in there for this, Karen.
this is just some of the office people. That's Mildred Bruner, and I see she's here today. You want to stand up, Mildred? You worked how many years there?
25 years. I started with Maddox, Mrs. Maddox hired me, and in about 3 months later, they sold it to Snake and Norway. And then I went through all the,
Yep.
I ended with the last ones, the last day of the sale. And all we had was a couple of.
I'm not sure who is, that's Donna. Donna worked at Sturgis Livestock and St. Ange. You want to stand up and say how many years you did?
About 13 years.
And Laura. Okay, you can go on,
Hey,
Richard.
Karen, the Rolodexes on that picture, the amount of I just wanted to say, what a change in the way you do business now. Look at the Rolodexes they got there, and how many people you have to keep track of.
Yeah. Had to look up liens on people, and yep, that was a microfiche. It's all changed. Yep. And that was Laurel made us all T-shirts for Christmas. And that is Jim Roth and Dale and Margaret Maddox and Charlie Hawks and Richard and Ida Mae Orwick and Jack and Betty Smink. There's Mildred again, and I'm not, and Tuffy Horton, he's passed away, but I'm not sure who that other lady is. Brad and
My uncle,
and your Uncle Harold.
that's back at Orla's head.
And Cordovie was an office help. This is, I guess, just what you think.
Yeah, so there's some opinions there.
Yeah, just some opinions. This is years of dedication. That was Billy Demerly, 46 years. Levon Erickson, who you couldn't clone her if you had the ability to, because she was one of a kind and she was an awesome lady. And she was 30 years, and Paul and I, at that time, he was an auctioneer for 20 years, and that was back, and I was there 26 years. And Ray Heupel, and Brad Severson, how long was you there? 18 years. And Dennis Zelfer. Is Dennis here? No?
I
Okay.
couldn't get him.
You couldn't get him? Okay. And who can tell me who that is? Little Joe, yep. He parked cars. And if he was in the wrong place, he'd tell you.
Keep going.
Yeah. Oh, well, before we go on the promotions, everybody stand up here who worked at Sturgis Livestock, because I know that I see in the background.
Amazing.
And then, you want the microphone, you want me to bring it around so you can tell who you are? Can you say who you are?
Katie Taylor. Jerry Maynard from Leatherwood.
Marla Reedy from up Slim Butte. Darla Hershey, Sturgis there.
Marty Floyd.
I'm Gail Davis Dillon. I'm from Sturgis.
Galen Udeberg.
And thank you, thank you. And here's just promotions of Sturgis Livestock. Go.
You're doing good.
Paul, you can interject on that, because that's your team, isn't it?
Oh, I used to be crazy fun with teams. And, when I was young, I used to have a little laundry streak, they told me. So one time, I was trying to scare the hell out of Brad and somebody else. We went around Fort Meade, and I pretended like the horses were running away. And, anyway, there was Brad, me, and Dana, and I forget who else, and maybe a 30-pack of Bud Light or something that had 2 left in it. And we come down Fort Meade, down the back road, and I was gonna scare the hell out of the guys, because I'd gone down there before, and I'd opened the gate beside the cattle guard. And we're running away and running away. And the boys are panicking. trying to get the lines, trying to stop these horses, because we're gonna end up in the cattle guard and kill everybody. So, just before I get to the cattle guard, I went down in the ditch to go through that open gate. No, the ride was too rough, and it popped me out of the seat and the wagon ran over me. Remember that, Brad?
You can go on, Richard.
I never got hurt, but I was sure sore.
These are just some.
Karen, Jim Roth, and maybe Gail can tell this better, but Jim Roth bought this huge old longhorn steer, and he had my dad ride that thing in parades with Gail.
I've seen a picture. I saw pictures, yep. Somewhere I've seen them.
Yeah, she could probably talk about it better, but he used to ride the.
Yeah, he used to be the, he used to ride the oxen with like a Snapple bit in it, and then he had like an old hat, I still have his hat. And he had a gun, and then he just rode him in the auctions, and, somebody hauled him around. And then later on, they went to a set of ponies with a, like a little Conestoga wagon type thing. But Susan Roth sent us a really good picture of Dad downtown in Rapid City, which would be nice to add to this.
Didn't he have that musket loader or something?
He had Grandpa Wood's gun.
Yeah, that he carried with him on that old steer. It was huge.
These are just sale bills and advertisement that went into a lot of, for the horse sales and the cattle sales and the bull sales.
That's the bull sales.
Yep. And that's,
The yellow sheets.
yep, that was mailed out to all consigners. You had one when you got there, people that came to the sale barn?
Yeah, and I was looking for anywhere from weather forecasting to politics to, let's see, there's those four little things on the side there, but it's kind of, I obviously didn't read through all of them, but there's some, obviously had all the prices and stuff, but I kind of skipped over that. It was kind of some of the newsy stuff that I thought was interesting.
Everybody
So-
on cattle, about the beef checkoff, the only county in South Dakota that defeated it.
And then that's the, I think that might be, that's the last slide.
I would like to have either the panel and people in the crowd, would you please briefly speak about how this closing of Sturgis Livestock affected Sturgis, the town of Sturgis? Who would like to talk first?
I will.
Brad, why don't you come out here where the camera can see it?
I'm like Karen, I was there not as many years here, but a lot of years, and it was all a big family. And the thing I was pretty proud of us for the fact that when I was started at Sturgis, when the sale barn at Rapid City closed, and that's when you noticed when you were getting some smaller consigners, Holsteins, odds and ends and stuff. But I think we always treated them well too. It wasn't, we was never a sale barn when I was there that we went for the 500 to 1,000 head consigners. We was always there for the guy that had 20 or 50 or a pot load. And I take a lot of pride in that.
You gotta go, somebody else go, you wanna go?
No, I'm fine. To me, and I think Daryl talked about it, but you could kind of see that, and it was gonna happen eventually. I remember the day that I quit the sale barn, me and another guy. But anyway, I'd been down and talked to the banker because I had owed on some operating stuff and didn't know where I was headed with things, and went down and talked to the banker, and they said, well, it's gonna happen, whether you want it to or not. and it was gonna close, and I know it was gonna close. But boy, it was the start of things going to hell in this town. I better quit with that.
Hey, Dr. Ismay, I would like your opinion.
Yeah, well, you know, we had to change our business completely after the sale barn closed because, you know, people would come to town either Wednesday or Saturday or whatever it was, and a lot of times they would buy vaccine. We sold a lot of stuff like that, and maybe bring something that needed vaccinated or worked on some way. And it just, you know, when I first came here in 1971, there was, 2 hardware stores, and Bob Saturday, I mean, there was regular stores in Sturgis. Yeah, Main Street, Sturgis. And now, I mean, after the sale barn closed, it went to tattoo parlors, you know, you might have something to smoke, and that sort of a thing. So, I mean, it really, Sturgis changed totally once the sale barn closed. That was really the main town, the main industry in Sturgis. I want to tell you something else about Billy Timberley. We ended up buying his house, you know, we own that house now, and we own the land that the sale barn set on. And I remember one time, the story is, you probably heard the story, but a trucker came out there and he said, "Hurry up, Billy, get me these cows." So Billy said, "Well, where's your paperwork?" You know, they had to have the bill of sale, brand clearance, all that kind of stuff, health papers, and the trucker said, "Well, you give me these cows or I'm gonna jerk you off that horse and kick the hell out of you." And Billy, he was always such a kind guy. And he said, "Well, you might get that done, but when it's all over, you still gotta have your papers." You might get it done, but when it's all over, you still gotta have your papers. Yeah, we had, and yeah, Billy was always such a good guy to work with. We're glad we have his house. I think I still see him in there once in a while.
Well, that was our pride and joy there. In fact, I think the only time I've ever bawled in public was the last day that they sold it. Offered $650,000 and they just said, "No, worth much more." And it was too late. I mean, that was what, but it was a big part of her life, a huge part of her life, and had so many friends.
How many, Paul, how many cattle did we sell that first year you come? Of course, I realized we was in a drought field.
The average that we sold there was 80-some thousand head. And we had to add the horses in a couple of years to make it 100,000. We never did hit officially 100,000, but added the horses in, it was. Well, my attitude, things go on, things change. You can keep your memories, but you can't keep things the same. I mean, it maybe had to happen. Maybe would have gone broke if I'd have got it bought back that day. So you never know. But it was a wonderful part of the community.
Will call.
I told Paul, I told somebody this morning.
Up to 2:30 if that's possible.
I told somebody this morning, I said, you know, if that sale barn is still there, I'd probably still be there. I might have to have a walk.
Just before the.
I know you would be.
Yeah.
I wouldn't let you leave.
Brad, while they're talking about what it's done to the community, and of course I agree with Doc, all you gotta do is look down Main Street and see what's going on. I mean, it's a 3-month town. Agriculture, Hungry Man's a dangerous one. It's still pretty neat. You think Sturgis Livestock's dead? Look at this crowd. There you go.
Danny's doing better today. He had a little bit of a stomach ache.
Okay, yeah, no, them guys pretty well said it all, but there's really no reason to come to Sturgis anymore. business-wise, unless you need to pay your taxes or get your license. You know, as far as buying anything, you know, there ain't nothing here, no place to go.
I've just noticed here, it's hard to put a gooseneck on a motorcycle.
Okay, all right, thank you so much.
I'm just gonna say that Sturgis Livestock was a big asset to Black Hills Park. It's only 40 miles, 50 miles from chute to chute. If we needed a certain grade of cow for the orders at the plant, I'd go to the loadout and I'd say, put the first 30 cows over by the loadout, and had a truck all set there, we'd have them in the cooler by noon. So it was a big asset to the local industry, which we were at that time, the largest packing house in the area. So Sturgis Livestock, and being in the middle of the week too, was good logistics, so it was the place to, as far as I was concerned, Black Hills Pack was, and Sturgis Livestock, thank you.
Daryl, the truck line, Beard's Trucking, they was always really good to work with.
Yep.
I mean, they were
Good people.
top notch.
Yep.
Anybody out in the crowd here that would like to give your thoughts on the effect of the closing of Sturgis Livestock? Karen, I did.
Well, I kind of grew up there, and I was the kid holding the door. I didn't do number 2 in that. He couldn't make it to the bathroom. We had to stop somewhere, and that was someplace that was private. So anyway, I think that getting rid of the sale barn at Sturgis, when I was a kid, you know, I was looking at that front lawn, and I learned how to fight there. I got in a lot of fights in that front lawn, and you know, it kind of gypped out the kids and my kids. You know, they don't have to, you know, they have to fight me now, but you know, it just kind of growing up there. It was.
Thank you.
It was a hard life, but it was good.
None of us were fat.
No, well I am now, but
Not then. Laurel?
I was just gonna tell you something Dale Hansen told us about. Dale Hansen was, at some point, I don't know what his title was, the county state's attorney or something in Sturgis for the county for years. And I just remember one time when we were in there and he was telling us what the Sturgis Livestock business did for the town. He said even them, their appointments were full. People made doctor appointments, people bought groceries. They made appointments and shopped for their kids' clothes when there still was stores on Main Street. I just remember him telling what a great thing it was to have Sturgis Livestock there, because it was a family deal. When people come in, there was many people brought kids and like I said, did all their business in there. We did all of our business in there until some of the stores, you know, they got tired of selling out they had to get out of there for the rally. And so they moved their businesses, but I think it had to have a huge impact business-wise on about everybody in town to do business.
I would like
They want to come up and look at the memorabilia before they leave.
I would like to thank everyone for coming, and we were a close-knit family, and I have enjoyed working at the sale barn all the time that I worked there, and I really appreciate, well, you have somebody back here.
Oh, you didn't mention too much about the Ranch House Cafe, but when I was a kid, I worked there. Bud Hobson, Bud and Estelle Hobson had the Ranch House Cafe. And of course, anywhere Bud went with a cafe, I had to be there. From Texas to Faith, South Dakota, to Ranch House, and to the Westerner. But we used to get some pretty rough help in there. And you had to be pretty quick on your feet to get your order, because these old gals they got them from, I don't know where they came from, but they would steal your orders to take to their customers. So So you have to really be ethically trained. I just wonder how many people in here worked in the bay, in the ranch house.
There was a guy that, I won't mention names, but there was a guy that run the cafe for a while. And we was in there one morning, he'd make crushed caramel rolls. And so we'd go in, get things done, go in and have a cup of coffee and kind of get our marching orders early in the morning. And this guy, he was in there and he always smoked a cigar, and the ashes were about this long, and he just kneading that dough for them. And all of a sudden, the ashes dropped up off in the dough, and he just kept on going.
I have nothing after that. There's memorabilia up here that several people have brought, something from Harley and Jim way back then, and clear up here, an aerial picture, and just what they used to give away. And Henry Carl's brought a sale bill from, I can't see the year, but it's from a cow, brought 18 cents. So that's been a while back. And Laurel's book and all the jackets up there. So thank you so much for coming, and thank you for participating, and this is a conclusion, right?